Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most resilient companies in the entire hard tech space, Ouster. You might know them by their ticker OUST. But look, we're not just going to sit here and stare at dry financial data today. No way. We're getting right to the heart of it, the people actually steering the ship. We're going to explore exactly how Ouster's founding team navigated a seriously crushing failure, only to bounce back and execute what the industry now calls the digital CMOS pivot. It's an absolutely brilliant story about commercial survival and high-stakes engineering. So let's get right into it.
They have already paid tuition. Their combat friendship is the core of their survival. I absolutely love that quote because it nails Ouster's foundation perfectly. In the tech world, we spend so much time obsessing over the market sector or the current trends, but at the end of the day, it's the people who dictate if a company sinks or swims. Co-founders Angus Pacala and Mark Fritchell aren't just your typical Stanford elites. They are totally battle-tested veterans who survived a really brutal LiDAR winter together. And that incredibly expensive tuition they paid? It fundamentally shaped their unmatched strategic vision. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. 1. Surviving the LiDAR winter. 2. Lessons from past failures. 3. The digital CMOS pivot. 4. The ultimate founder duo. And finally, 5. Scaling for the future. All right, starting off with part 1, surviving the LiDAR winter through sheer pragmatism.
Which brings us right into part 2, lessons from past failures. This is the crucible phase that forged their entire technological philosophy.
So, let's trace how this all unfolded. The story actually kicks off back in 2005. That's when the DARPA Grand Challenge completely inspired Angus while he was still at Stanford, basically anchoring his entire career in autonomous perception. Fast forward a bit to 2012, and Angus and Mark joined this early LiDAR star called Quanyarji, where they built the M8 system. But then 2015 hits, and it was a breaking point. They watched Quanyarji just sink into this swamp of highly complex solid-state architectures and make all these market promises they couldn't possibly keep. Totally disillusioned, they both just walked away. Actually, that massive struggle at Quanyarji became their most painful, yet arguably most valuable lesson. They reunited that exact same year to found Ouster, kicking off an incredibly aggressive scale-up to the market leadership we see leading up to 2026.
Moving on to part 3, the digital CMOS pivot, a whole new era of manufacturing.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the massive gap in technical thinking. On one hand, you have the old way that Quanyarji was pushing, this over-reliance on complex, solid-state architecture that was just insanely expensive and almost impossible to mass produce. But on the other side is Angus's huge breakthrough, the realization that LiDAR absolutely had to become simple and digital. So Ouster went all in on digital CMOS. What does that mean in plain English? Well, they essentially decided to manufacture LiDAR exactly like we manufacture mobile phone chips. They took this wildly complex optical problem and just reduced it down to a standardized semiconductor manufacturing process.
And here is exactly why this matters to you. This wasn't just some fun, theoretical engineering project. Going this digital CMOS route directly drives an absolutely astonishing 60% gross margin. Let me put that into perspective. In hardware manufacturing, especially in a bleeding-edge sector like LiDAR, a 60% margin is practically unheard of. By drastically cutting down on system complexity, they totally slashed their manufacturing costs. And that gave Ouster an incredibly healthy cash flow and a massive competitive edge.
Let's transition over to part 4, the ultimate founder duo, where execution meets vision. To pull off that level of execution, you need a very, very specific dynamic. CEO Angus Pacala is the pragmatic strategist of the operation. He is so laser-focused on his CMOS vision that he's actually known to take important business calls from a dingy, makeshift sound booth. Why? Because he refuses to waste money on flashy corporate aesthetics. And right beside him is CTO Mark Fritchell. With a cross-disciplinary background spanning Stanford, Apple, and Palantir, Mark is basically the ultimate architect. Not only did he figure out how to integrate thousands of discrete components onto just 2 tiny chips, but he relentlessly polices the cost structure. A big-picture visionary paired with a ruthless cost controller, it's pretty much a perfect match.
Crucially, this relationship is deeply battle-tested. They met freshman year at Stanford, bonded over autonomous driving homework, walked away from a failing company together, and then reunited to build Ouster from the ground up. For analysts and investors looking at this, a team that has survived the absolute lowest valleys and highest peaks together is a massive premium. This level of unbreakable trust is exactly what allowed Ouster to maintain rock-solid management stability through some really complex capital maneuvers, like that massive 2023 Velodyne merger and anchoring the pivotal 2026 Stereolabs acquisition.
Let's move to our final section, Part 5, Scaling for the Future and Global Monetization.
Looking at the landscape as of April 2026, the most striking shift in leadership is the elevation of Cyril Jacquemet to Chief Revenue Officer. Coming from a serious background in optical physics, Cyril's track record absolutely speaks for itself. He successfully scaled Ouster's revenue from $11 million to a staggering $169 million. Think about that jump. Elevating him to this role isn't just some standard HR update. It's a massive, aggressive signal to the entire market.
We can basically view Ouster's evolution in two very distinct phases. Phase 1 was all about proving the technology actually works. Led by Angus and Mark, they proved that the digital CMOS route was feasible and that it generated high margins. Now, with Cyril stepping up, the company is firmly entering Phase 2, global scale monetization. The founders are so confident that their tech is mature that their entire focus has shifted away from proving the concept to just aggressively cashing in on the global market.
So I'll leave you with this to chew on. When you're evaluating opportunities in the wild, volatile world of hard tech, do you chase the flashy hype? Or do you place your bets on battle-tested pragmatists who have already paid their tuition, who obsess over every penny of cost control, and who manage to navigate industry storms using a brilliantly simple digital architecture? Honestly, that might just be the ultimate survival logic for the entire sector. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.